You step into the cool hush of a vast stone corridor. The scent hits first, warm, thick, impossibly sweet. Not just one fragrance, but layers. Rose, saffron, smoke, something spicy like cardamom, and a whisper of musk trailing beneath it all like the last note of a long flute song. The air is heavy, not unpleasantly so, but like someone burned incense 3 days ago, and the walls still remember. This is not your average stroll through history. You're inside an Achaemenid palace now, Persepolis, to be precise, somewhere between 500 and 400 BCE. The torches flicker lazily against polished limestone. Outside, the dry Persian plateau hums under a moon the size of your palm. But in here, it's just you, a handful of servants padding barefoot past columns, and the unmistakable aroma of power. Yes, power smells like perfume. You probably won't make it through this day. Before we go further, gently tap that like button so this history dream doesn't disappear into the desert sands. Subscribe if you'd like more slow walks through the scented corridors of forgotten empires. And if you're still awake, drop your location and the time in the comments, just to prove to the algorithm that night owls love history too. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. The Achaemenid Empire, Persia, at its glittering zenith, wasn't built on a brute strength alone. It was sewn together with silk, diplomacy, and scent. You see, the Persian elite didn't just wear perfume, they weaponized it. Your feet glide along the tiled floor, past carved bas-reliefs of lotus-bearing envoys and long-robed kings. Each figure seems frozen in mid-breath, as if they too are waiting for the scent to announce who just entered the room. You pass a courtier, his beard curled and perfumed with myrrh oil. He doesn't look at you, too busy making sure his robes waft just enough cypress and sandalwood to impress the satrap from Lydia. In this world, how you smell speaks louder than how you speak. Here's your first major historical truth of the night. Ancient Persians believed perfume could shape perception. Darius the Fixed, the great king who ruled an empire stretching from Egypt to India, was said to perfume not only his person, but his palace halls, and even his royal messages. Clay tablets from Persepolis record shipments of aromatic oils like frankincense, cinnamon, and galbanum sent to distant provinces. These weren't spa packages, they were political theater. One tablet, translated in sleepy cuneiform, suggests a shipment of rose oil was dispatched to Susa, with enough volume to douse several royal corridors. Historians still debate whether these oils were used on the walls, on clothes, or, rather extravagantly, on the messages themselves. You inhale again. The scent has shifted slightly. Less floral now, more woody. That's cedar, probably from Lebanon. The Achaemenids were early adopters of what we'd now call brand identity. Imagine them today as luxury influencers who sprayed signature scents before negotiating international treaties. Obscure fact for your dreamy consideration. Persian perfumers sometimes blended their oils with crushed pearls or gold dust, not because it improved the smell, it didn't, but because glittering residue on your robes told others, I can afford to waste treasure on fragrance. You're walking through history's softest flecks. From somewhere beyond the columned hall, you hear the slow plink of a string instrument. A barbat, perhaps. A servant scurries by, holding a bronze vessel of steaming oil, scent trailing like a ribbon. You don't know where he's going, but you suspect a politically delicate visitor just arrived, and someone important wants the room to smell like generosity. And you just keep walking, your steps soft, your senses wrapped in the slow unraveling of an empire that once perfumed its ambition. Your path narrows as you step into what must be a royal antechamber. Here, the smell becomes almost intoxicating. Sweet resin, almondy benzoin, and something bitter that stings the back of your throat in a way that says, "This is imported." The walls are painted with scenes of winged bulls and long-robed priests offering incense to fire altars. A servant offers you a cloth to dab your temples, scented, naturally, with spikenard and mint. You accept. It's either that or sneeze your way through imperial history. This room isn't just for waiting, it's for testing. If your scent holds up after 3 hours in here, you're ready for the real court. In the Persian world, perfume wasn't only about luxury, it was purification. Scent stood at the hazy intersection of religion, cleanliness, and statecraft. The Zoroastrian fire temples, sacred to many Persians at the time, burned fragrant woods not only for the gods, but because odor, to them, carried spiritual weight. Clean scent meant moral order. You settle onto a low-cushioned bench, trying not to wrinkle your imaginary robe. You're not alone. A minor governor sits beside you, his cuffs heavy with ambergris. He smells like a small navy. He nods politely. You both pretend not to notice the official pacing nearby, who's attempting to subtly waft cinnamon vapor toward your direction while maintaining the dignity of someone not holding a portable censer. Major historical fact number 2. Persian diplomats were often trained in the olfactory arts. Envoys were expected to adapt their scent palettes to local customs when visiting foreign courts. When Persians went to Egypt, they wore lotus-heavy perfumes. When meeting Greek dignitaries, they dialed it down. Nothing says "don't colonize me" like blending in with the local musk. You smile at the thought of a diplomat packing perfume the way modern travelers hoard travel adapters. Historians still debate whether these olfactory adjustments were formalized or left to the intuition of the perfumed elite. Obscure tidbit drifting through the smoke. Persian military commanders sometimes ordered soldiers to carry perfumed handkerchiefs into battle, not to distract the enemy, but to mask the stench of long campaigns. It's unclear whether this boosted morale or just made everyone smell aggressively like myrrh. The minor governor beside you adjusts his tunic. He's still pretending you're not there, but he's definitely leaning your way. You catch a whiff of saffron and civet, an expensive gamble, like wearing velvet to a dust storm. Through an arched doorway, a eunuch appears. He doesn't speak. He simply raises one hand, delicate fingers curling as if conducting invisible incense, and beckons you forward. You rise. The smell of the antechamber clings to you like memory. As you walk, your mind drifts again. You wonder, not idly, how many decisions in human history were shaped by scent. Not just the ones made in this palace, but all of them. How many grudges were softened by sandalwood? How many alliances soured because someone overdid the musk? You're led through a curtained hallway where the velvet fabric breathes with oils. You're not sure if it's frankincense or the slow sigh of imperial ego, but something in the air feels like ceremony. You arrive at a final set of doors, bronze, carved, just slightly ajar. On the other side, the throne room, and behind that, a world stitched together not by iron alone, but by the invisible threads of aroma. And still, You walk. You slip through the tall bronze doors like a breeze. The throne room greets you not with shouting or drums or clanging sandals, just silence, soft as dust, the kind of silence that smells like sandalwood and authority. Here, the scent is curated, not just thrown together like a spice merchant's stall. No, someone thought about this. Someone chose this specific mix. A dry base of myrrh, uplifted by airy pine resin, and just a breath, barely there, of jasmine. You breathe it in slowly, and for a moment you forget this isn't your empire. The ceiling arches high above, painted with stars. Not figurative stars, actual constellations that a priest astronomer once insisted should match the night Darius was crowned. Whether that's true or not, well, historians still debate whether the celestial mapping was symbolic or if someone genuinely tried to turn the roof into a horoscope. Either way, it's gorgeous. Your eyes drift down, and so does the scent, to the throne. Not a chair, not a seat. The throne, carved from dark stone, decorated with gold and lapis lazuli. It rises like a promise. It doesn't sparkle. It radiates. 2 guards stand on either side, utterly still, wearing robes faintly perfumed with cassia bark. Even the guards have a fragrance strategy. And at the center, seated just high enough to make conversation uncomfortable, the King of Kings. Tonight, it's Xerxes. He looks both regal and slightly bored, like someone who owns several worlds and has smelled all of them. His beard is immaculate, curled at the ends, dusted with a citrusy oil you can't quite place. Maybe bergamot? Maybe Persian lime? It's expensive, whatever it is. He waves 2 fingers. You bow, not deeply, but long enough to let your borrowed scent linger. The audience begins. You don't say much. That's by design. In this court, words are like perfume, meant to be dispensed sparingly, in measured drops. You answer a few questions, nod in the right places. You notice the king's attendants subtly refreshing the room's scent by waving peacock-feathered fans over heated stones, from which trails a smoky stream of camphor and honeyed resin. Major historical note for this moment. Xerxes was famously obsessed with presentation. When he invaded Greece, his army reportedly crossed the Hellespont on a pontoon bridge decorated with gold, incense altars, and, yes, perfume burners. This wasn't just overkill. It was a message. Even in war, Persia arrives like a scented storm. You resist the urge to sneeze. One of the ministers nearby smells strongly of asafoetida, a spicy, sulfurous gum said to clear the mind and repel evil. It also repels most small animals, and at least one human in this room. You, obscure tidbit wafting in with the smoke. In elite Persian households, there was a practice of passing perfumed wine around the table, not just to drink, but to smell. Guests would inhale the aroma before sipping, and some believed it could affect their dreams. You quietly hope you don't start dreaming about this room. The audience winds down. Xerxes nods once. A servant approaches you with a shallow dish. Inside, an oil blend as a parting gift. You're told it's a custom mix, suitable for your temperament and planetary alignment. The servant doesn't elaborate. You exit through a side hall, leaving behind the throne, the scent, and the quiet weight of empire. As you pass beneath a frieze of lion-battling warriors, you think even their depictions smell like saffron. You'd laugh, but you don't want to disrupt the ambiance. And still, you walk. The hallway leads downward, into cooler air. and tighter corridors. The stone walls are plainer here, and the scent changes too, fresher, less ceremonial. You smell mint, lavender, and the bracing bite of vinegar water. You're entering the servants' quarters. Here, the perfume is still present, but practical. This is the scent of labor, oils to ward off insects, to ease muscle pain, to signal cleanliness. A woman passes by with a jar of clove and aloe ointment balanced on her shoulder. She nods to you. Her headscarf is damp, perfumed with something pungent and citrusy, maybe for the heat, maybe for the mood. A cook walks past, carrying a bundle of thyme and dried citrus peel. The scent clings to his tunic, not for flavoring. It's to keep flies away. You follow him through a modest archway and find yourself in the palace kitchen. It's quiet, but active. A dozen cooks prepare meals with slow, deliberate motion. They work by lamplight and memory. The air here is thick with spice, cumin, cinnamon, and the occasional sharpness of onion that reminds you this is, ultimately, a place of real people. Not everything smells like royalty. Here's your major fact for the hour. Even palace kitchens in ancient Persia used perfume, not in the food, but on the cooks. The idea was to prevent sweat or unpleasant odors from ruining the atmosphere. In some kitchens, junior staffers were assigned specifically to spritz aromatic water on the head chefs during intense preparation. Imagine being the guy whose job was to perfume the sous chef. A young boy crushes herbs in a stone mortar. He glances up, offering a grin, his hands stained with rose petals. You don't ask why. He doesn't offer, but you suspect someone upstairs wants a sweet-scented rinse before bed. Historians still debate whether the elaborate perfumes of court life ever reached the lower tiers of the palace, if the guards, cooks, or stable hands ever wore the same oils as the satraps. But the kitchen smells like its own small kingdom, and for now, that's enough. Obscure trivia alert. Some Persian recipes called for adding scented oils after cooking, intended not for flavor, but for olfactory appeal when the dish was uncovered. A kind of culinary perfume. Dinner, but dramatic. You move on, following the perfume trail like a sleepy bloodhound. You pass a laundress, stirring linens in a steaming basin of floral water. She hums a tune older than any inscription in Persepolis. Beside her, a young man folds robes and drops little pouches of clove and sage into their sleeves. These aren't sachets. They're political tools. Every nobleman needs to smell like intent. You pause to watch, and the laundress, amused, flicks a few drops of lavender water toward you. It lands on your arm and sinks into your skin like permission. Farther down the corridor, the rooms grow narrower. You smell animals now. Horses, definitely, but also something lighter, drier, camels. You're near the stables. Even here, the air is manipulated. Hay is mixed with crushed juniper berries and cedar chips. Animals of the court must not offend royal noses. You don't stay long. A stable hand glares at you with the tired eyes of someone who just bathed a goat in rose water. You turn back toward the main hall. Steps slow, body relaxed. The day is winding down. You pass a narrow window slit, and outside, the desert night has deepened. The stars above the plateau shimmer like incense ash scattered on velvet. A cool breeze filters through the gap, scented faintly with night-blooming jasmine and far-off fire smoke. And still, you walk. You emerge back into the palace's outer halls, where the perfume of power has faded into something gentler. The torchlight flickers softly along the plaster walls, casting delicate shadows that dance like silk in the slow wind. The scent now is subtle, just a whisper of vetiver and bruised mint, as if the stones themselves exhale between footsteps. You've left the inner sanctums behind, and now you drift toward the gardens. Yes, those gardens. The legendary Persian paradise that gave us the very word, peridesa, an enclosed, walled Eden of green in the midst of sun-bleached earth, the kind of place where emperors walked and philosophers lingered too long with dates and figs. A servant slides open a carved wooden door, and the scent changes immediately. There's the sharp sweetness of cypress, the lemony tang of citron leaves, and something soft and moist beneath it all. Perhaps loam, or watered earth, or just the smell of plant life, remembering the sun. A single nightingale lets out a sleepy warble. You step outside. Moonlight glints off the trickling channels of water that zigzag across the courtyard like silver veins. These aqueduct-fed streams divide beds of flowers, tulips, narcissus, irises, all planted not for symmetry, but scent. You walk slowly, the hem of your robe brushing low boxwood hedges that release their own woody aroma in protest. The Persians didn't build gardens just to admire them. They designed them to be walked through, like fragrance in motion. Major historical fact: Persian royal gardens were scented seasonally, layered so that no matter the time of year, something bloomed and something perfumed. These weren't static displays. They were botanical orchestras. Xerxes himself is believed to have ordered specific trees planted in a sequence so that the scent of one would lead to another. Like a musical composition you could stroll through. You pass under a pomegranate tree. Its blossoms are sharp and spicy in the night air. Somewhere ahead, rose bushes bloom in silence, their scent curling toward you as though eager for attention. Historians still debate whether these gardens were ever open to the public or strictly reserved for the elite. The answer may lie in how you interpret the scent, generous or exclusive, obscure tidbit to tickle your weary mind. Some Persian gardens employed workers whose sole task was to perfume the walkways by scattering crushed petals or dabbing the flagstones with scented oil before royal strolls. A perfumed path, quite literally. You pause at a stone bench where someone has left a shallow bowl of cold rose water. It's for dipping fingers, for cooling the pulse. You try it. The scent clings to your wrist like memory. Nearby, two poets murmur beneath a fig tree. Their voices are low, their beards oiled with something resinous and honeyed. They're probably reciting verses about moonlight and longing, and comparing the empire's decline to a drying jasmine blossom. Classic poetic material. The fig tree's bark smells faintly like coconut if you press close enough. The wind shifts. Suddenly, the garden smells of saffron again. Where it came from, you're not sure. Perhaps someone nearby just opened a pouch, or perhaps the night itself carries echoes. You rest for a moment longer on the bench, listening to the water, breathing deeply as the moonlight stretches like silk across the ground. And still, you walk. Beyond the garden, the palace slopes downward into a quieter zone. You follow a tiled path etched with vine motifs, their grooves darkened by centuries of wind-borne dust. Here, the scent dims to something delicate, almost private: lilac, faint myrrh, and a breath of aged parchment. You are entering the library, not the vast, legendary library of Alexandria, That's for another night. This one is more intimate. The Achaemenid Archive, a place of tablets, sealed scrolls, and fragrance designed to preserve not only the past, but the air around it. Inside, it smells like logic and time. Rows of cubbyholes line the walls, each containing clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform, wrapped scrolls of vellum, or, in a few rare cases, fragile parchment sealed in aromatic oilcloth. A scribe looks up from a wax tablet, squints at you, and returns to his work with the resigned air of someone who's just been interrupted in the middle of cataloging 74 types of barley rations. The scribe smells like cedar, beeswax, and ink. It's oddly comforting. Major historical fact number 6. The Persians maintained extensive administrative records, many of which survive today, thanks to careful storage and, yes, fragrance. Archivists often used cedar oil or camphor to deter insects and preserve scrolls. Some scrolls were even lightly perfumed, so that, when opened, they released a controlled scent, like the world's first scented letter. You drift between shelves, trailing a finger along the smooth edges of tablet racks. The air is cooler here, quieter, as if the stones themselves are listening. It's not musty, it's memory heavy. A young apprentice crosses your path, carrying a copper pot of warm water laced with violet oil. He's dabbing the floor tiles. You ask why, and he answers, deadpan. The king dislikes dusty feet. You nod solemnly. It checks out. Obscure cultural tidbit for tonight's mental museum. Some Persian scribes wore perfumed wool caps while they worked. Supposedly, it helped focus the mind. More likely, it was to mask the smell of ink and sheep vellum. Either way, they smelled smarter than they looked. You find a small alcove where scholars gather to copy old texts. A priest reads aloud from an Aramaic scroll, his voice barely louder than the rustle of cloth. You sit nearby, your back against a cool stone column, and listen, not to understand, but to absorb. The words rise and fall like a chant, and the scent of the ink, something earthy and metallic, mingles with the sweetness of the oil lamp beside him. Historians still debate whether these texts were purely administrative, or if some included poetry, medicine, or magic. Several untranslated tablets sit nearby, smelling faintly of time. You stay a while longer, not reading, just breathing. This is what sleep in an empire smells like. Not silence, but continuity. Not stillness, but scented preservation. You lean back. You close your eyes briefly. And when you open them again, the scribe across the room has lit another lamp. Its smoke curls up, carrying cinnamon and clove. And still, you walk. The lamps burn lower now, their glow smudged and sleepy against the tiled floor. You step out of the archive and back into the hallway, where the scent has mellowed into something hushed, like the faint breath of flowers pressed between the pages of time. Outside the window slits, the night deepens into a kind of velvet stillness. But inside, life continues, quietly, perfumed, deliberate. You're led now to the women's quarters of the palace, known in Greek as the gynaikonitis, though the Persians likely had a more elegant word for it, something like andarun, meaning within. These rooms are rarely spoken of in royal inscriptions, but you've been allowed in. Well, let's pretend, for tonight, that the curtains part just for you. The scent is immediately different. Not louder, not sweeter, just layered. You catch rose again, yes, but also chamomile, dried orange peel, and something more unusual, Toasted almond? No, wait. Orris root, powdered and mixed with fine white ash. It's the kind of smell that floats up from silk drawers and whispered laughter. A few women pass by. Nobles, attendants, perhaps even royal relatives. Their hair glistens with oil. Their wrists glimmer with saffron paste. They walk in silence, but their fragrance precedes them, like an introduction, major historical detail to ground you. Royal Persian women were trained in perfume blending. Some even held the title of perfumer priestess, responsible not just for personal scent, but for ritual aromatics during festivals or sacrifices. Smell wasn't just personal, it was religious, social, and in the right hands, political. You walk past a basin where two girls are dyeing silks in warm vats. The steam smells like lavender and vinegar, used to set the colors and, incidentally, clear the sinuses. The colors shimmer like wet jewels. Turmeric yellow, pomegranate red, indigo like midnight sea. Obscure fact for your growing collection: some high-ranking Persian women reportedly slept on pillows scented with fenugreek and musk, believing it warded off illness and dreams of bad omens. Whether that worked is anyone's guess, but their dreams likely smelled amazing. A chamber opens up to your right, a wide room with carpets so thick they hush every step. Along the walls sit low tables with bowls of dried herbs, bundles of myrtle, and burners carved from alabaster. Two women sit cross-legged, grinding something with a bronze mortar. One glances up at you and offers a sleepy smile. She gestures toward the mortar and in a low voice says, "Jasmine and gooseberry seed, for softness." You nod. You're not sure what's meant to be softened. Skin, mood, fate. But you respect the effort. Historians still debate how much political influence royal women in the Achaemenid court truly had. Some believe they wielded considerable behind-the-scenes power, especially over matters of marriage diplomacy. Others think they lived more secluded lives. Their influence whispered, rather than spoken. You walk on. A corridor leads toward the baths. Narrow, quiet, lit only by firelight, dancing through carved lattice. The scent here becomes warm and steamy, laced with cardamom and soft clay. You're not invited in, but you hover at the edge, listening to the splash of water and the murmur of half-forgotten songs. Someone is laughing. Someone else is perfuming the bath stones with crushed mint and coriander. You smile, you inhale, you leave them to it. And still, you walk. You turn a corner and find yourself in one of the palace's lesser courtyards, a place where time moves differently. The moonlight here is brighter, or perhaps the white stone just remembers it better. The scent is light now, crushed thyme, old brick, and something slightly metallic, like rain on dust. But there's no rain, just echoes. In the center of the courtyard stands a low platform. A torch burns beside it, unguarded. Atop the platform is something small, round, and entirely out of place. A clay perfume jar. It's unsealed. You pick it up gently. The scent is immediate. Myrtle, definitely. But also a peculiar note. Dried quince, and possibly, improbably, salt? You breathe it in again. Yes, salt. Like a breeze from an imaginary sea. Major historical curiosity. Archaeologists have uncovered small sealed vessels in sites across the Persian Empire. Some were clearly perfume jars. Others, maybe votive offerings, or tokens of affection, or recipes lost to time. One such jar in modern-day Iran was found to contain traces of both rose and asafoetida, a combination that still baffles everyone. Was it a mistake? A cure? A prank? Historians, in their sleep-deprived honesty, still debate what half of these vessels were even for. You set the jar down carefully. It was probably left there deliberately. Maybe an offering, maybe forgotten, or maybe someone knew you'd be walking through. Obscure scent fact, freshly unsealed. The Persians were among the first to mix aromatic substances with alcohols, grain or fruit-based, producing early prototypes of what we'd now call eau de toilette. These were not just for show. They were portable, reusable, and absolutely essential for long diplomatic trips through dusty roads and odorous inns. You sit at the edge of the platform and watch the shadows stretch across the courtyard tiles. Somewhere, a dog barks. Somewhere else, a man sneezes, possibly due to an overzealous application of musk. You rest for a moment, allowing your body to catch up with the quiet. Then you notice something carved into the base of the platform, a half-worn inscription. You lean closer. It reads, "What pleases the gods may pass through the nose." You blink. You smile. You don't know who wrote it or when, but you like them. A breeze stirs. A petal falls. The scent drifts, one note changing into another. You're not sure if it's the same jar or a new wind, but now there's cinnamon. And still, you walk. The night grows deeper now, thick, slow, draped across the palace like a well-worn shawl. Your path narrows again, this time leading you through the servants' outer quarters, the spaces behind the pageantry. These corridors don't echo like the royal ones. They muffle. The scent here is quieter too. Soapy, smoky, real. Someone is baking. You catch it immediately. The warm, crusty aroma of flatbread just pulled from an earthen oven. It mingles with the smell of singed flour, cracked sesame, and the faintest trace of sweet almond oil brushed across the crust. If the thrones smelled like ambition, the kitchen smells like resilience. You're invited in, unspoken, just a nod from a tired cook who sees no harm in letting another wanderer share the warmth. Inside, it's tight, full of motion. One woman stirs lentils in a deep bronze pot, while a boy stokes the fire beneath. The air is thick with cumin, dill, and black seed. You sit near the wall. The floor is warm beneath you. And then, something unexpected. A man walks in with a small ceramic bowl and places it near the oven's edge. The contents are opaque, viscous, almost glowing in the firelight. He stirs once. A plume of steam rises, and with it, rose, saffron, and vinegar? He's making scented vinegar, a cleaner, a remedy, and perhaps most importantly, an olfactory declaration that this kitchen belongs to someone who still values beauty in function. Major historical fact: the Achaemenid Persians used infused vinegars not only for cooking and cleaning, but also for ritual cleansing and subtle fragrance. Guests were sometimes offered vinegared water infused with rose or mint to wash their hands and faces before meals, a practice both hygienic and symbolic. A tall girl walks by, humming softly. She carries a tray of pomegranates and figs, each one dusted with crushed fennel. Her sleeves are dark with steam, but her smile is light. She pauses long enough to hand you a fig. It's warm, and it smells like sugar, thyme, and long summers. You take a bite. The skin breaks softly, and the inside tastes like sunset. Obscure, cultural tidbit. Among the palace servants, certain meals were believed to bring prophetic dreams, if consumed after midnight, especially those flavored with sweet herbs and perfumed oils. A fig soaked in rosewater could lead to visions of loved ones or tax collectors. The results were mixed. You thank the cook, though he doesn't respond, just waves you toward the doorway with a motion that says, "Try not to trip over the cat." You look down. There is, in fact, a cat. It smells faintly of cardamom and sass. You step outside into the cold air again, belly warm, spirit soothed. Historians still debate whether these behind-the-scenes lives were recorded at all, or simply scented into memory by those who lived them. The records focus on kings, but tonight you've eaten their bread, and still you walk. The wind carries you next to the outer terraces, where the scent of the city finally reaches you. The palace has been a cocoon, perfumed, polished, removed from the noise of life. But now, the scent of Persepolis proper comes calling. Dust, goats, charcoal, and, somehow, fried leeks. You step out onto the stone overlook that faces the nightscape below. The lights of the outer city flicker like a spilled box of amber beads. Small fires, cooking hearths, torchlight from guards on patrol. Somewhere, someone is singing. Badly. The scent changes again. Charred wood, garlic oil, a hint of sheep's wool, and are those dates? Burned dates. It's beautiful, in its own way. Major historical fact. While the royal city of Persepolis was planned and maintained with grandeur in mind, it was surrounded by satellite towns, clusters of laborers, scribes, artisans, and support workers whose lives hummed just beyond the gates. These people lived with the empire, but not inside it. Their contributions were scented in the stone, the food, and the clothing, but not always in the scrolls. You sit on the terrace ledge, letting your feet dangle just slightly over the edge. Below, a caravan arrives through the eastern gate, its donkeys trailing the unmistakable scent of spice sacks, cinnamon, cardamom, dried orange peel, maybe a smuggled jar of clove. One donkey sneezes, a poetic reminder that even trade smells sneezy sometimes. You see a group of children chasing each other past the merchant stalls. Their laughter rises, scented with dirt and sweat and joy. Obscure tidbit. Some traveling traders who entered the city were required to submit their wares for olfactory inspection before setting up shop. It's unclear whether this was a health precaution or simply an excuse for someone to smell all the new cinnamon. You imagine a royal perfumer standing at the gates, nose high, sniffing like a judgmental sommelier. Nope, that myrrh's counterfeit. Take it back to Babylon. Historians still debate whether the smells of the outer city influenced the palace trends, or vice versa. Did common folk imitate the king's perfumes? Or did palace perfumers sneak down to the markets for inspiration? You lean back on your palms and breathe it all in. The grandeur, the grime, the rosewater, the onions. This is the empire too. And still, you walk. You descend the terrace steps, each one cooler than the last, until your sandals touch the packed earth beyond the palace's threshold. It's quieter here, but not silent. The city breathes, slow and low, like a creature curled around its own fire. You're in the artisan quarter now, not the loudest part of the city, but the one with the most texture. Clay, sweat, dye, and, yes, perfume. In the strangest places. You pass a workshop. A man leans over a table covered in the small ivory combs. His fingers are stained with indigo, and beside him rests a bowl of jasmine oil, not for himself, for the combs. The scent keeps insects away and adds a touch of luxury for the ladies who will eventually use them. You wonder if their hair will carry this perfume for days. Afterward, he doesn't look up, but he grunts, something like a welcome. Major historical fact: Persian artisans, especially those producing goods for the elite, often used scented oils to treat their wares. Ivory, wood, cloth, even metal was sometimes rubbed with resin-infused wax to keep it from tarnishing and to add a royal scent. This practice blurred the lines between craftsmanship and perfumery. Farther along the path, you reach a dye shop. The scent here is aggressive, sharp with fermented madder root and something acrid, possibly stale alum water. A young boy runs out coughing, his hair slick with what smells like basil. You don't ask. Inside, bundles of wool hang from hooks, dripping deep reds and dusty yellows. The air is thick with pigment and purpose. A woman at the back is preparing indigo cakes, pressing them with her bare hands. You watch as she sprinkles rose water over the drying cloth, not to affect the color, but to hide the smell of the indigo paste. A courtesy, or a small rebellion. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some Persian dyers believed that particular smells sealed colors into the fibers: rose for red, cedar for green, and a rare kind of musk for deep blue. Whether it worked or not is unclear, but the tradition survived for centuries. You thank the air by breathing it in. There's no one to hear you, but the act feels polite. Outside again, a potter's kiln puffs smoke into the sky. It smells of clay and ashes and a faint sweetness. Cherry bark, perhaps. A little oil splashed in the fire. Maybe an offering, or just a way to keep the neighbors from complaining. Historians still debate whether artisans in the outer city received state-sponsored perfume rations like palace staff did. Some records hint at deliveries, but whether they were payment or bribes or both is lost to the dusty winds of bureaucracy. You pause at a well. The bucket rope smells like wet hemp and sandalwood soap. Someone cares enough to clean it, even if no one watches. A cat brushes your leg. This one smells like fish and mystery. You keep walking, the city unfolding with every step like a scroll dipped in oil. And still, you walk. By now, the stars are high enough to burn silver holes through the night. The air cools against your skin. You've wandered into the garden quarters, where city folk grow their own herbs in small beds outside their homes. The scent here is lively: fennel, anise, wild garlic, and clove. Even the soil smells like something steeped in time. A man kneels over his plants, sprinkling water mixed with old rosewater dregs. Keeps the cats out, he mutters, without looking at you. Mostly, he gestures to a patch of mint, so aggressive, it's crawling out of the garden wall, like it owns the place. It smells like a battle between medicine and dessert. You sit on the edge of a stone planter and watch a woman harvesting chamomile. In the moonlight, she ties the bundles with dyed thread, blue and green, perhaps just for luck. Major historical fact: in many Persian households, domestic gardens served not only as food sources, but as perfumed pharmacies. Herbs were dried, steeped, burned, or boiled depending on the ailment or the superstition. Garden owners, especially older women, were the de facto perfumers of the neighborhood. You pass by a low window where someone is boiling quince with sugar and cardamom. The scent wafts out like a story you're not invited into. But you listen anyway. Obscure tidbit, fragrant, and slightly odd. It was once believed that boiling sandalwood chips near your doorway would drive away jealous spirits. Whether it worked or just made your neighbors jealous of how nice your house smelled is up for debate. A young girl with henned hands steps out of her doorway carrying a dish of something smoking gently. Myrrh and dried orange peel, you guess. She walks the perimeter of the house, casting the smoke outward with a palm leaf fan. It's not religious exactly, more like habit, passed down from women who knew a thing or two about air and omen. Historians still debate whether this practice was rooted in ritual or practical pest control. Perhaps both. Perhaps neither. Most history is someone's grandmother saying, "Just do it this way." You walk on. The garden path curves past a sleeping dog, his nose twitching at the scent of marjoram. In the distance, a flute plays a low, spiraling melody, half lullaby, half lament. Someone's night isn't going as planned. You pass a small shrine, built into the corner of a courtyard wall. No idol, no grand altar, just a polished stone, a bowl of dried petals, and a small dish of oil. It smells like home, though you've never been here before. The night deepens again, and still, you walk. The path ahead grows narrower, less a street now, and more a suggestion. Smooth stones give way to packed earth, dotted with fallen leaves and fragments of crushed herbs. You've wandered into one of the oldest parts of the city, where buildings lean slightly, as if nodding to each other in exhausted conversation. The scent here is layered with memory, old cedar, dried fig leaves, and something sharp and minty clinging to the cracks in the walls. You walk slowly, respectfully. This street remembers more than you do. A door opens beside you, quietly, without ceremony, and a woman steps out, carrying a clay jar wrapped in linen. The jar leaks a faint trail of scented steam, thyme, coriander, and tallow. Not perfume, not exactly. A remedy, perhaps. She sees you, nods once, and disappears into the night, like someone who's been doing this for centuries. You hear a distant cough, hoarse, persistent. The jar's purpose makes more sense now. Major historical fact. The Achaemenid Persians practiced a kind of early medicinal perfumery. Remedies were often aromatic, whether to please the gods, calm the patient, or both. The line between medicine and perfume was as thin as a silk thread soaked in rose oil. Some mixtures were swallowed, others were burned. A few were simply waved beneath the nose until something happened, or didn't. You pass a low table set just outside a doorway. On it rests a bundle of sage, tied with gold thread, next to a bowl of dried sumac. No one watches it, no one touches it, but its scent is like an open eye. Obscure tidbit. In certain Persian cities, it was considered bad luck to extinguish a household's incense flame without first offering a prayer to Anahita, the goddess of water and fertility. Whether that prayer was whispered, sung, or just silently exhaled remains a mystery. The air changes again, just slightly. A new scent arrives, unexpected and oddly elegant. Lily and smoke. You turn a corner and find the source. A man crouches beside a brazier, feeding it dried flowers one by one. Not for warmth, for scent. He doesn't look up, just says, "My wife loved lilies. I don't like them, but the smoke is quiet." You nod, unsure whether it's a ritual or just grief with good manners. Historians still debate whether mourning rituals in ancient Persia involved perfumed smoke, but there are hints. traces of burned florals and burial sites, notes in funeral hymns about scented passage, and ash remains containing both bone and crushed petals. You walk on, the smoke curling behind you like a ribbon from someone else's dream. The buildings grow closer. A narrow archway appears ahead, carved with faded patterns and wrapped in vines that smell of old honey. You duck through it and find yourself in a tiny square, a courtyard maybe, or just a forgotten open place. A tree grows in its center, knotted and crooked, its branches dotted with blossoms that release a faint scent like apricots and dust. Around its base are bowls, some empty, some filled with stones, petals, bits of fabric. You don't disturb them. Instead, you sit and breathe. And still, you walk. The tree fades behind you as the path widens again. The architecture changes subtly. Smoother walls, more symmetry, less clutter. You're near the home of someone important, not royal, but influential. A governor, perhaps, or a priest. The scent here is curated again, measured and elegant. You inhale deeply, frankincense, bay, olive oil warmed over flame, and beneath it all, a faint trace of something sweet and strange. Possibly mastic resin, possibly a pastry left out too long. You step through a threshold made of polished stone and into a courtyard garden. It's lit by low lamps and hung with small bells that chime in the breeze. Their music is soft, more suggestion than sound. You're greeted wordlessly by a servant who nods and gestures to a small bench by the fountain. You sit. The water smells clean, not perfumed, not floral, just water, honest and plain and cool. A rare scent in a city of masks. Major historical fact: elite Persian households often maintained small private gardens designed for scent rather than show. These micro-paradises were planted not to impress visitors, but to soothe the soul. Some gardens were laid out with astrological intent, each plant tied to a planet or god, creating a scented horoscope that changed with the seasons. This one feels lunar. The night-blooming flowers, jasmine, queen of the night, moonflower, each breathe out with exaggerated grace. You wonder if they know you're listening. A boy walks by with a bronze bowl filled with sandalwood chips. He sprinkles them gently over the path, then lights them with a coal. The smoke rises, sweet and slow. He doesn't speak either. You begin to wonder if this house has any use for language at all. Obscure tidbit of the hour. In some elite circles, scented smoke was used to mark time. A specific blend would be burned at dawn, another at midday, another after nightfall. The wealthy didn't just tell time by the sun, they smelled it. You lean back against the bench and close your eyes. The wind shifts. Now, you smell saffron and cumin. Someone's cooking, somewhere close, but the scent is deliberately mild, meant to drift but not intrude. You glance toward a corner of the courtyard where a small shrine stands. Not grand, just a stone with 3 circles carved into it and a garland of dried petals. An oil lamp flickers nearby, its flame low, steady. Historians still debate what the 3-circle symbol meant. Some say it represents Zoroastrian cosmology. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Others think it might just be a local family emblem. Either way, it smells like faith and quiet intention. You rise from the bench and continue past a corridor lined with linen screens. The air here grows cooler, and the scent leans towards cedar and crushed coriander seed. A breeze drifts through, carrying the sounds of someone singing, low and hoarse, but peaceful, a song meant for no one, or perhaps for the garden itself. You don't recognize the words. You recognize the feeling, and still, you walk. You step out of the house's serenity and back into the winding veins of the city. The quiet lingers on your skin, like a polite guest unsure when to leave. The scent shifts once more. City life returns with a hum. Sweat, smoke, citrus peel crushed underfoot. Someone nearby is pounding something in a mortar. You hear it before you smell it. Garlic. Lots of garlic. You pass a food stall, barely more than a cloth canopy, and a brazier. The vendor waves at you with a skewer of something charred and vaguely meat-shaped. You decline, but not before breathing in the tangled notes of cumin, fenugreek, and sweet pomegranate molasses. Is it dinner or perfume? In this city, who can tell? Major historical fact: street food in the Achaemenid era was fragrant, affordable, and occasionally weaponized in political protest. Food stalls doubled as message boards. A satirical perfume, say garlic oil candles mocking a corrupt official, wasn't unheard of. Scent and message were often inseparable, especially when paper was scarce and noses were not. You pass an old man sharpening knives under a torchlight. His whetstone smells faintly of lemon balm and bone. The steel shines. He doesn't. A breeze carries a new scent your way, familiar and disarming. Ash and rosewater. You follow it. It leads you to a laundress standing by a fountain, scrubbing a crimson robe with practiced fury. The soap she uses is laced with crushed bay leaves and lemon zest. She hums a tune, not joyfully, but efficiently, like a lullaby with a deadline. You smile at her. She doesn't return it, but she does toss a handful of rosemary into the rinse bucket just as you pass. A small blessing, maybe, or just habit, obscure tidbit. In some neighborhoods, washers scented clothing not to please the wearer, but to claim ownership. A particular blend became a kind of signature. This came from my wash basin, thank you very much. One dispute over saffron-scented robes allegedly led to a minor court case involving 3 witnesses and a very offended goat. You continue through an alley that smells of pickled vegetables, damp linen, and unspoken plans. Above you, laundry lines flutter with silk scarves, perfumed by the wind. A boy runs past you, holding a small bundle wrapped in oiled cloth. It smells like tamarind and resin. Whatever it is, he's proud of it. Historians still debate whether these domestic, scented practices were officially recorded or simply woven into daily life. Few scrolls mention laundry water, but linen never lies. You pause at a doorway lit by a single clay lamp. Someone inside is singing off-key. It smells like home. And still, you walk. Now the road slopes upward, curving toward the hills beyond the city's walls. The ground becomes stonier, and the scent shifts with the elevation, drier, thinner, touched with wild herbs and cold wind. You're walking toward the necropolis. Don't worry, this isn't a ghost story, just a place where stone remembers breath. The tombs of kings rise ahead, carved into the cliffside like sleeping gods with sore backs. Each one looms with quiet pride, etched with royal inscriptions and, yes, perfumed history. The air grows still. Even the wind seems to whisper here. Cautious and slow. Major historical fact. Tombs in ancient Persia weren't just architecture. They were scented sanctuaries. The burial chambers were anointed with oil blends. often spikenard, saffron, and camphor, intended to preserve dignity, repel decay, and appease divine forces. Visitors sometimes brought small dishes of perfume as offerings to the dead. You approach a stone platform where once, perhaps, a priest stood reciting prayers as incense curled into the sky. There's no one here now, just the faint memory of frankincense, still clinging to the surface like a breath that refuses to fade. You sit. The stone is cold, but not unfriendly. Obscure tidbit. Some believe that the fragrance recipes used in burial rites were kept secret, passed from priest to priest. A perfume of the kings, never written down. Several attempts to recreate it have ended in failure, or at least in very odd-smelling museum exhibits. You lay back on the stone for a moment and look up. The stars above the tombs are brighter than before. Closer, perhaps. The air up here is less crowded. The night more present. You smell time growing wild in cracks of the stone. Somewhere behind you, an animal, small, maybe a fox, rustles through dried grass, stirring up dust and fennel seed. A torch flickers nearby, unlit, but still carrying the scent of old oil. Olive, definitely. Maybe a hint of juniper. Historians still debate whether tomb visitors left with more than they brought, if the act of being near the king's perfume conferred favor, healing, or just bragging rights at the next market gathering. I smelled Darius. Someone might whisper, reverently. You stay for a while, not moving, just inhaling the history. And then, slowly, you rise. And still, you walk. The path winds along the edge of the cliff now, where the scent of the city fades into silence. Down below, torchlight flickers like embers caught in a dream. The wind carries only fragments, smoke, dust, a lonely trace of cardamom from someone's rooftop stove. But up here, it's wild again. You pass through a stretch of scrubland where the native herbs clutch the soil like old secrets. The air is sharper, lined with sagebrush and something peppery. Maybe artemisia, the kind that tastes like warning. A night owl hoots, and you instinctively breathe quieter. This land is older than palaces, older than kings. You reach a clearing marked by weathered stones. Nothing grand, just an old place for sitting, perhaps once, for watching the sunrise or waiting for a caravan. You sit, and the stone feels warmer than you expect, as if the sun left a bit of itself behind for you. Major historical fact: Zoroastrian fire altars were sometimes built in these open, elevated places, modest platforms surrounded by sacred air. The fires, though carefully tended, weren't only for light. Aromatics like juniper, storax, and pine resin were burned as part of daily devotion. The scent carried prayers upward in smoke, or so they believed. You can almost smell it here now. A memory of burnt pine and cracked myrrh, still curled in the rocks. You close your eyes. A distant rustle behind you suggests you're not entirely alone, but it's probably just a jackal, or a very spiritual goat. Obscure tidbit: some travelers wrote of wandering perfume, clouds that lingered in holy places, aromas that seemed to cling to air even after the fires died out. One early Greek visitor described a mountaintop that smelled like honey and iron. No one knows what he meant, and he probably didn't either. The moon leans down, closer now. You smell crushed grass under your sandal, dry fig bark, and, unexpectedly, mint again. The wind loves mint, apparently, keeps bringing it back like an old tune. You hear a low whistle, a shepherd perhaps, somewhere on the next hill. His song barely carries, but it's threaded with something. Frankincense? No, that's not possible. But your brain's had a long day. Memory and scent are tangled cousins. Historians still debate whether personal devotion in Persian religion was more olfactory than spoken. The texts speak of purity, fire, and thought, but never underestimate the ritual of inhaling something sacred in the dark. You rest your hands on your knees. You breathe in until the air smells like home, and still, you walk. The descent begins. Stone gives way to gravel, then to packed soil again. You leave the hills behind, their silence gently closing like a book. Ahead, the city's edge returns. Not loud yet, but visible. The flicker of torches, the shadows of sleeping structures, the occasional cough echoing in the still air. You find yourself near a small temple, not grand or gold-covered, but clean, symmetrical, almost anonymous. It rests in a grove of cypress trees that smell like polished wood and old rain. There's a scent of burnt clove lingering around the lintel, and the faintest trace of citrus oil. Not celebration, ritual. You step inside. No one stops you. Major historical fact. Many Persian temples, especially those outside the royal cities, were maintained by local priesthoods that incorporated scent into every part of worship. Incense was burned not to please the gods, but to purify space, cleanse thought, and direct intention. Worship wasn't about noise. It was about fragrance, alignment, and quiet order. The interior is simple. Whitewashed stone, low benches, a small brazier still warm to the touch. You kneel, not out of obligation, just fatigue, and breathe in. Bay, laurel, a pinch of asafoetida. Not pleasant exactly, but honest. A bowl rests on the altar, filled with what looks like black salt and sprigs of marjoram, possibly a household offering, or a failed recipe. Hard to say. Obscure tidbit. Some priests believed particular perfumes could summon virtues, courage through cedar, humility through rose, clarity through lemon balm. A few even claimed to prescribe character blends based on a person's behavior. Imagine being told you smelled like arrogance and time. A priest enters, glances at you, and simply nods. You return the gesture. He lights a small taper and places it into a carved niche in the wall. The wax is scented, resinous, with hints of amber and wormwood. The room begins to smell like warm memory. Historians still debate whether the temple fragrances had standard formulas or were improvised locally. A few clay tablets suggest rules. Most priests probably just did what their noses told them. You step outside again, the cypress trees whispering in the breeze. The scent clings to you, mixing with everything you've passed through tonight. You smell like earth, fire, bread, fig, smoke, rose, salt, and now, faith. A woman passes you, carrying a jar of water on her shoulder. It smells like clay, damp linen, and eucalyptus leaves. Probably just laundry water, or possibly sacred, or both. You follow the curve of the street, eyes growing heavy, and still, you walk. The city exhales as you re-enter its sleeping folds. The bustle has hushed into murmurs. Doors are shut, windows darkened, but the air still holds memory, especially where the perfumers live. You've wandered into their quarter, modest homes with open courtyards, their walls dark with resin smoke and hope. Even now, long past business hours, the streets smell like ambition. You pass a door ajar. From inside, the scent of crushed myrrh and boiled rose petal wafts out. Not for sale, just someone refining their blend after midnight. Passion doesn't punch out at dusk. Major historical fact: Achaemenid perfumers were not only craftsmen, but often state employees. Some worked directly under royal patronage, producing signature scents for rulers, generals, and foreign ambassadors. Their recipes were guarded with the same intensity as political secrets, because in some cases, they were political secrets. The air here is heavy with clashing fragrances: cypress smoke, violet oil, maybe even a citrus-soaked cloth hanging to dry. One courtyard smells like heaven. The next, like someone boiled a sandalwood tree in panic. You pass a woman sweeping her threshold. Her broom is soaked in mint water. She catches your gaze and shrugs, keeps the spirits out, or invites them in. I forget which. Obscure tidbit. Some perfumers believed that the final blend of a perfume should not be decided by the nose alone, but by listening to the blend. If the scent sang in harmony, it was ready. If not, back to the mortar. One recipe ends with the instruction: let it rest until it stops shouting. You spot a scrap of parchment on the ground. A list, maybe. It reads: resin, good kind. Date vinegar, something from Mesopotamia, not last week's clove. Ever again. Someone's apprentice has a sense of humor, and perhaps no eyebrows left. You walk past a barrel filled with spent petals. It smells defeated, but noble. Historians still debate the role of perfumers in diplomacy. Did kings send fragrances as messages? Were alliances sealed with scent? One tablet mentions a peace oil sent to Lydia, rose and orange blossom, with no hint of musk. Diplomatic or just a very polite insult? We'll never know. You reach the edge of the quarter, where the last houses press against a garden fence. The vines here smell of jasmine and sandalwood ash. The breeze lifts the scent, carries it forward, and hands it to you. You keep walking, and still, you walk. The road beneath your feet is smoother now, polished stone that remembers sandals, wheels, and ceremonial processions. You're back near the Royal Avenue, where important people used to make important decisions, while smelling like very expensive forests. But now it's empty. Almost. A guard stands near the gate, leaning on his spear with the ease of someone who knows nothing's going to happen tonight. He watches you, then wrinkles his nose. You smell like everywhere, he says. Good job. You nod and pass him without breaking pace. He doesn't stop you. The avenue is wide and echoing. On either side, stone columns reach upward, their tops lost in darkness. You walk between them like a ghost in a marble forest. The scent here is strange, distant, yet deliberate. Incense once burned here in thick ribbons, layered for ceremony, myrrh for solemnity, pine resin for clarity, cinnamon for warmth, and an occasional surprise note, like lime peel or coriander flower, just to keep people guessing. Major historical fact: royal audiences in Persepolis were choreographed events. From the color of the drapes to the thickness of the incense, everything was engineered to impress, intimidate, or charm. Scent played a key role, calming nervous visitors, asserting wealth, or disguising the more human elements of political stress. You pause beneath one of the columns. The stone beneath you is warm with the memory of torches long extinguished. You close your eyes. You imagine a line of courtiers here, each perfumed within an inch of their legacy. Someone back then once said, "He who smells like power doesn't need to speak." Not entirely wrong. Obscure tidbit A rare account mentions that on days of diplomatic ceremony, courtiers were required to pass through a perfumed smoke chamber before meeting the king. This fragrance tunnel supposedly cleared the air of any regional impurities, or at least made everyone smell less like donkey. You walk on. At the end of the avenue stands a large brazier, now cold, but once it held the finest gums and spices the empire could offer. Frankincense from Arabia, balsam from the Levant, saffron from the east. You lean in. The scent is gone. And yet, maybe not. Historians still debate the identity of Royal Blend Abraber 27, referenced in several trade records and court inventories. Was it real? Was it just a placeholder for stuff we don't want to explain to the Greeks? Possibly. But wouldn't you love to smell it just once? You cross the plaza and feel the wind rise again, curling between the columns, stirring ghostly notes from the stone. You inhale, and still, you walk. The avenue gives way to open air again, an expanse of flat stone that overlooks the sloping heart of the city. Below, torches flicker. A few shutters open, spill laughter, then close again. The world begins to prepare for sleep. But you, reluctantly scented traveler, have one last scent to chase. To your left, down a narrow stair carved into the hillside, is the old archive building. Not the grand, gold-trimmed library of legend. This one is plainer, a record-keeper's tomb, quiet, cold, smelling of wax, dust, and deliberate ink. You descend. At the base, the air is cooler. You enter through a heavy door, oiled with something familiar. Perhaps time, perhaps just old olive grease. But it swings open like it remembers your touch. Inside, rows of clay tablets sit sleeping in niches. Each one smells faintly different. Dirt, yes, but layered. You lean closer to one marked with an unfamiliar seal. It smells of cinnamon. Major historical fact. The Persians sometimes scented clay before firing it. Not for preservation, but to mark the tablet's purpose. Legal texts with sharp citrus oil. Love poems with saffron or rose. An entire archive could smell like a garden or a courtroom, depending on the shelves you stood near. You walk slowly, your footsteps echoing in the still chamber. The air is thick with a perfume you can't quite name. Age, maybe, or ambition. Obscure tidbit. Certain royal decrees were sealed with scented wax, perfumed so that any tampering could be detected not just visually, but by nose. If the scent changed, the message had been compromised. A clever method until someone realized scent fades faster than ink. You pass a desk with a shallow bronze basin used for washing hands before handling texts. It smells faintly of rosewater and lime. Even knowledge had its ritual perfume. You sit on the edge of a low bench, running your fingers over the grooves of a tablet. The characters rise, like tiny hills. You don't understand the language, but the scent speaks. Beeswax, myrtle, dry parchment. The perfume of bureaucracy. Historians still debate whether these scent practices were universal or peculiar to certain scribes. Some argue it was a matter of tradition. Others believe it was just a way to make long nights surrounded by legal texts slightly more bearable. You breathe it all in. The language, the labor, the lingering ghosts of someone else's notes. And still, you walk outside the archive. The stars have shifted again, making room for dawn. Not yet visible, but it's there. You feel it. The air grows lighter, just barely. You follow a road that curves downward into the merchant quarter, where the scents never sleep. Even now, when no stalls are open, the air is infused with what the day left behind. Cardamom husks, date wine stains, roasted walnut skins clinging to wooden tables. You step into an alley where crushed saffron petals have been swept into a tidy line. Some merchant is obsessive, or very symbolic. Major historical fact: saffron, among the most valuable spices in the Persian world, was used not only in cooking and perfumery, but also as currency. Contracts were signed with threads of it pressed between tablets. Some debts were forgiven with nothing but a bowl of well-aged saffron oil. You sit on a stone ledge beside a stall, shuttered tight. The counter smells like sesame and cedar polish. A small cloth is draped over something. You lift it carefully. Dried lemons. Dozens of them. The scent is arresting. Sharp, bitter, bright, like a memory that forgot to fade. Obscure tidbit: dried citrus peels were sometimes placed beneath floorboards to guide the dreams of the sleeping. Whether they guided you to pleasant dreams or just made your feet smell like marmalade is uncertain. A night merchant passes you, carrying 2 clay jugs. One is filled with vinegar, the other, oil. Both infused, rosemary and rue in the oil, probably pomegranate and clove in the vinegar. You ask where he's headed. Spill both in the morning fire, he says. Keeps the day clean. You nod, because that sounds reasonable at this hour. Historians still debate whether perfumed ritual fires were meant for practical cleansing or metaphysical insurance. Some temples claimed it cured disease. Others just wanted their neighborhoods to smell less like goats. The wind shifts again. A new scent comes, curling around the corner like a secret. Vanilla? No, that's impossible. That's not native, but you follow it anyway. Down a side street, past a row of shutters, past a sleeping hound that smells like dust and surprisingly fresh mint. You reach a doorway covered in blue cloth. A small burner sits outside, its coal nearly cold. Inside, a faint sweetness lingers. Maybe not vanilla, maybe fenugreek mixed with fig, or maybe the idea of vanilla, imagined by someone who only ever heard it described. You lean against the doorway. You don't enter. You just breathe. And still you walk. The sky begins to pale, ever so slightly. Not light yet, just less dark. The scent of the city is shifting again, as if it too is waking up slowly and rubbing sleep from its eyes. Somewhere nearby, bread begins to bake. That familiar scent, yeast, ash, and the faintest trace of caraway, seeps into the cracks of the stone. You find yourself back among the domestic streets, where neighbors know each other by the sound of footsteps and the smell of stew. You pass a house with its door ajar. A woman inside is steeping something in a copper pot: onions, lentils, and coriander. The smell curls around your ankles like a cat. She doesn't speak, but she gestures to a second pot simmering beside the first. You lean close. Milk, lightly spiced with cardamom. You're offered a cup. You accept. It's warm, sweet, comforting in a way that language can't fully capture. Major historical fact: Persian families often drank milk teas or spiced dairy drinks in the early morning hours, not just for nourishment, but as ritual. Many added herbs, mint, saffron, or cinnamon, not for flavor alone, but for energy, clarity, or dreams remembered. Morning, like everything else, was scented. You thank her with a nod, and she smiles with her eyes. Obscure tidbit: in some households, it was believed that the first scent you inhaled each morning shaped the character of your day. Children were sometimes woken by holding rosemary or orange blossom under their noses, not out of luxury, but as a kind of spiritual hygiene. A bad-smelling morning was considered unlucky, even dangerous. You step outside, warmed from the inside now. The city is starting to breathe more deeply. A broom scrapes softly in the distance. A chicken complains at nobody in particular. A cloth vendor opens her stall with a grunt. She unfurls bolts of linen that have slept in cedar chests. The scent is dry and faintly smoky. She spritzes one with rose water. Just a touch. Marketing. Ancient style. You nod to her. She nods back. Too early for haggling, she mutters. Then yawns. Historians still debate whether these small morning gestures, aromatic rituals, scent offerings, herbal steams, were tied to spiritual practice or simply habit. But in a world without clocks, the nose knew when to rise. You walk past a corner where the wind is changing. It brings the smell of dew on stone, warm oil, and a donkey who's clearly had a lot of opinions recently. It's almost morning, and still, you walk. You find yourself at the city's edge again, where gardens stretch toward the sunrise, and the river begins to wake. The wind shifts. Cooler here, more open. You walk along a stone wall, trailing with jasmine vines. Their scent is sleepy, not yet bold. Ahead, a public bathhouse begins to stir. The scent here is like no other place. Water, steam, lye soap, citrus peels floating in buckets. You hear the soft hiss of fire heating the bath pots, the slap of towels being wrung out. No one rushes. It's too early for urgency. A boy emerges carrying a bundle of herbs, lavender, basil, and a few sprigs of mint, meant for steeping in the hot pools. He drops one, and you hand it back. He grins like you've just saved the empire. Major historical fact. Persian bathhouses were not only sites of hygiene, but of olfactory therapy. Each pool was sometimes scented differently, some stimulating, some calming. Herbs were hung in the steam vents, and aromatic oils were offered post-bath to soothe the skin and spirit. You step inside. The air hugs you, warm, wet, and alive with quiet scent. Someone has tossed dried lime into one of the side pools. It smells like a dream of sunlight. In the corner, an old man sits with a cloth over his face, inhaling steam from a bowl spiked with eucalyptus and sweet anise. He looks very serious about this. Obscure tidbit. In some elite bathhouses, the attendants memorized the preferred scent of each regular guest. Perfume was not applied before entry, but after the bath, rubbed gently into the shoulders or neck. Bathing wasn't complete until scent returned to the skin. You sit on a warm bench. Your clothes begin to carry the fragrance of the room. Soapstone, thyme, and something like warm wheat. The door opens again. A woman enters, carrying a dish of sandalwood paste. She's not here to bathe. She's here to bless the space. She dots the paste onto the warm stones. The scent blooms. Historians still debate whether these acts were religious or just rituals of cleanliness, taken very seriously. Either way, the scent remains. Soothing, warm, purposeful. You leave the bathhouse quieter than you entered. The sun has risen just enough to paint the sky with a promise. You stretch, and still, you walk. You walk through a field of light now. Gentle gold sliding down walls, pooling in corners, gilding leaves. Morning has officially arrived, but the city isn't rushing yet. Not here, not in this moment. The path takes you to the old market square, still half sleeping. Canvas stalls flap lazily in the breeze. Crates of produce sit waiting to be displayed. And somewhere, someone is unsuccessfully trying to hush a rooster with opinions. The square smells different now. Morning bread mingled with damp earth, dried fruits, and the sleepy sweetness of overnight fig jam. Major historical fact: markets in the Achaemenid Empire often opened with scent as much as sound. Vendors burned herbs by their stalls, mint to attract buyers, onion skins to ward off pests, and in some cases, powdered saffron mixed into incense to signal high-quality goods. Shopping was as much about the nose as it was about the coin. A baker opens his shutters. The scent rolls out like a warm sigh. He gives you a half-smile and slides a flatbread onto a wooden plank near the edge of his stall. You tear off a piece. Steam escapes. The bread is laced with nigella seeds and, oddly, clove. It works. You feel it in your chest more than your tongue. He doesn't ask for payment. He just says, "Try the one tomorrow. It'll be better." Obscure tidbit. There was once a tradition in certain towns of flavoring each day's bread slightly differently, so the scent told you not just what was being baked, but when. Monday might smell of onion and mint. Thursday, fennel and honey. Friday, nothing but rose water and salt. The week, laid out in crumbs. You pass a spice vendor rearranging his display in concentric circles. He sprinkles a little cardamom into the center of one, then brushes it away with a feather. Purely aesthetic. You pause at a stand selling dates and preserved lemons. It smells sticky, sharp, and faintly fermented. Like memory in a jar, historians still debate the symbolism of certain market scents. Was cinnamon considered bold? Was rose feminine, or simply expensive? Some linguists argue that the words for virtue and fragrance were occasionally interchangeable in ancient Persian dialects. To smell good may have once meant to be just. You wander to the edge of the square, where a girl is crushing herbs with a stone pestle. She stops to wave, then points at her mixture. You lean down and sniff. Chamomile, mint, a little something smoky. "Sleep tea," she whispers, "for waking up slowly." You smile, and still, you walk. The road bends again, pulling you toward the river's edge, where the air is cooler, wetter, more alive. The scent here is green, reeds, algae, morning wet wood, and crushed petals floating downstream. The banks are dotted with boats tied loosely to their moorings. Some carry cargo, others just the scent of yesterday's travel. One smells strongly of olives, another of dried fish and cardamom. Oddly enough, you give it a wide berth. You pass a man rinsing a clay amphora in the water. It smells of sweet wine, sun-warmed wax, and a little despair. He hums something off-key and waves. Major historical fact: river commerce in ancient Persia wasn't only about goods. It was about smell. Traders perfumed their cargo, their boats, even themselves to convey status. Frankincense meant luxury. Garlic meant honesty. A scentless trader was either new or suspicious. A woman beside him unloads bundles wrapped in palm fronds. She unties one. Inside, lavender, marjoram, cinnamon bark, dried and tightly packed. She sniffs it, nods in satisfaction, then reseals it. The package has been on the road for weeks. It still smells like the hills it came from. Obscure tidbit. In certain regions, river guides were trained to identify approaching cargo boats, not by sight or flag, but by scent. The rosewater from Shiraz arrives before the boat does. One poet claimed, "You smell its ambition long before you see its shadow." You walk along the riverside path, where fishermen have already set their baskets. One burns a bit of bay leaf by his feet. For luck, he says, and mosquitoes. A small shrine stands near a bend in the river, barely more than a stone circle, with a carved bowl in its center. You peer in. Inside, water, rose petals, and a sliver of amber. Someone left a prayer behind and scented it properly. Historians still debate whether river offerings were regulated by temple authorities or done entirely by personal custom. Some records suggest fines for improper gifts tossed into sacred waters. Others claim the gods weren't so picky. It's likely the truth, as usual, floated somewhere in the middle. The sun creeps higher. The water glitters with quiet intention. And still, you walk. You follow the river until the city thins behind you. The path becomes dappled with sunlight now, patches of it sliding through the leaves of fig trees and slender pines. Their scent is green and sharp, fresh sap with just a whisper of sweetness. Somewhere, a bird sings a four-note song and then promptly forgets the last note. Ahead lies a garden, not a grand royal one, but a paradisia, a private oasis built centuries ago and still tended by hands that love quiet things. The gate is open. You walk in. The air changes instantly. You are surrounded. The scent here is layered like silk. Rose, violet, sweet basil, whetstone, and something richer. Perhaps civet. Perhaps the memory of musk, soaked into old cushions under the shade of a pomegranate tree. Major historical fact. The Achaemenids were among the first to design gardens explicitly for the nose. These paradisa were more than pleasure. They were philosophy in the form of fragrance, planted to align with cardinal directions and heavenly bodies. The scents changed as you moved through the space, leading the soul gently toward harmony. You sit beneath a small trellis draped in honeysuckle. Bees move slowly between blossoms, heavy with sleep and gold. Obscure tidbit. Some gardens employed perfumed irrigation, water channels lined with fragrant herbs, like mint or lemon balm, so the very act of watering the plants released waves of scent. One poem describes water singing with smell. A gardener nearby is sprinkling something across the path. Powdered rose petals mixed with finely ground clove. You catch his eye. Smells better than dust, he says. Tells the ants who's in charge. You wander deeper into the garden. A breeze rises, bringing with it the citrus of bitter orange trees and the strange, resinous hush of cypress. A child plays with a hoop down a side path. The hoop is wrapped in lavender twine. He's laughing, but quietly, as if sound must also bow to the garden. Historians still debate whether gardens like these were public or elite spaces. Some records suggest anyone could walk through if they were respectful. Others say guards once stood at the gates. This one doesn't seem to mind your presence at all. You pause by a low fountain. The water has been tinted pink, not dyed, just steeped in rose petals. It smells like calm ambition. You lean over and inhale slowly. And still, you walk. You exit the garden with reluctance. It clings to your clothing now, its fragrance trailing you like a gentle reminder. The path loops back toward the heart of the city, but detours through a lesser-known neighborhood. It's quieter here. The homes are smaller, less carved stone, more sun-baked mud brick. But there's life in every doorway, and scent in every crevice. Someone is boiling chickpeas over a fire that smells of a cinnamon bark and orange rind. Someone else is painting a doorway with oil infused with safflower and soot. Everything is touched by purpose. Major historical fact. Among lower classes in the Persian Empire, perfumes were still deeply present, but often homemade. People blended what they had: dried herbs, cooking spices, ashes of fragrant woods. The result was more than deodorant. It was identity, resilience, and a statement. We, too, are worthy of beauty. You pass a row of laundry lines. The fabrics flutter gently, each carrying its own scent. One smells like vinegar and thyme, another, cumin and something floral, probably iris root. A woman sitting nearby is brushing her hair with a comb dipped in rosemary oil. She doesn't look at you but says, "You missed the flower market. It opened at dawn. You didn't know there was a flower market?" Of course there is. Obscure tidbit. There was once a belief that walking through 7 distinct scents before midday would bring luck for the rest of the week. Some took this very seriously. Others just said it was a good excuse to go outside. You follow a trail of sandalwood ash along the alley. It leads to a small shrine, little more than a niche in the wall, with a carved symbol of the sun. Inside rests a bowl filled with fragrant oil. It's smoking faintly, even now. A boy runs past you, clutching a bouquet of something half-wilted. It smells like marigold and ambition. Historians still debate the origins of home altars in Persian neighborhoods. Were they permitted by religious authorities or quietly tolerated? Perhaps they were both, legal in the way that everything sacred and personal eventually is. You continue walking as the wind picks up. It smells like saffron. And still, you walk. The sun is fully awake now, laying itself across rooftops and courtyards like a silk robe unfurled. Shadows pull back into corners. The streets are busier than they've been all night, yet still somehow soft around the edges. You pass through the gate of an unfamiliar courtyard. Perhaps a friend of a friend once lived here. Maybe you dreamt it. It smells like both. Inside, men and women gather around low tables, drinking tea and listening to a musician pluck out a tune on a small, stringed instrument. The notes hang in the air like perfume, sweet, minor, unfinished, and the scent here, extraordinary. Saffron steam rises from one end. At the other, someone opens a jar of preserved quince. Rosewater flickers through the breeze like laughter. Someone smokes a slender pipe filled with clove leaves and cinnamon bark. No one seems to be selling anything. They're just being. Major historical fact. In ancient Persia, certain courtyards were designated majles, or gatherings of scent and conversation. Here, perfumes were worn not for seduction or status, but to elevate the mind. A good scent could inspire poetry. A bad one could end a friendship. One could argue not much has changed. You sit quietly. A girl hands you a scrap of cloth, dampened with orange blossom water. "For your temples," she says. "You look like you've been walking since yesterday." She's not wrong. Obscure tidbit. In some intellectual circles, it was said that scent was the 6th teacher. It reminded you where you'd been, helped you recall a line of verse, even softened disagreements. There are reports of debates that ended when one party offered a bottle of rose oil. Peace by perfume. The musician stops playing. Someone recites a few lines from a forgotten poet. The crowd hums in appreciation. Someone laughs. Someone sneezes. Someone smells strongly of basil and doesn't care. You stand. Someone asks, "Leaving so soon?" You smile and say, "Still walking." Historians still debate whether these gatherings were political in disguise or simply cultural salons. But most agree that the use of scent in such spaces made people linger longer than they meant to. which may have been the point. The courtyard recedes behind you, but the scent clings like a final stanza you can't stop repeating. And still, you walk. The road now winds toward silence. You've looped back to where your journey began, but nothing smells the same. That's the trick of scent. It changes what it touches. Even time. You arrive at a quiet hill overlooking the city. The stone here is warm. The breeze is kind. The air smells of wild thyme, sandalwood dust, and the memory of 1,000 gardens. You sit. Below, the city pulses with soft color. Smoke rises from breakfast fires. A child laughs. A hawker calls out. Someone somewhere drops a jar and curses gently. It all smells like life. Major historical fact. At the heart of Persian ritual, life was the belief that the senses connected you to truth. Sound, sight, and scent were not distractions. They were invitations. Fragrance wasn't a luxury. It was language. You inhale deeply. Everything you've encountered, the fig smoke, the mint, the saffron, the resin, the bread, the rose, the vinegar, the violet, has mingled into something you can't describe, but recognize. It smells like memory. Obscure tidbit. Some believed that a person's soul retained scent after death, carried like breath into the next world. The scent a person wore, most often, was said to linger in places they loved, as a kind of aromatic echo, comforting maybe, or awkward, depending on your choices. Historians still debate whether scent was more about devotion or pleasure, but you suspect that, in ancient Persia, the two were never truly separate. You lie back on the warm stone, you close your eyes, and for a moment, nothing moves but the breeze and the stories it carries. The city is behind you now, a quiet hum drifting down into memory. The scent of the wind softens. No longer urgent, no longer new. It becomes something simple. Faint lavender in the distance, a trace of firewood that will never burn again. The salt of sweat dried hours ago. You've walked through a world built not only of stone and rule, but of longing and habit. You've breathed in the thoughts of priests, the confidence of queens, the resolve of scribes, and the warm dreams of bakers who prayed through bread. You've passed through spaces where scent was sacred, where it was currency, or camouflage, or comfort. You've tasted time through clove and fig and cardamom. You've become part of the map, and now the city sleeps again. The morning slips its fingers through the treetops. The birds go quiet for just a breath, as if listening for something. You're still, no longer walking, just drifting. The scents of ancient Persia settle over you like a blanket. Smoke and rose, oil and ash, honey and distance. Let them stay. There's nowhere else to be now. You've reached the edge of story, and maybe, just maybe, you've carried something forward with you. Close your eyes. Exhale. Sleep.